You didn't really lose her. What you lost was yourself in the process of trying to hold on to her. And now, when you catch your reflection in the mirror, you barely recognize the person staring back. This isn't some romantic tragedy. It's a brutal awakening. Jean-Paul Sartre once warned us, the instant you start needing someone else to feel whole, you stop being your true self. You don't live. You perform. You become a version molded by her expectations, not the person you were truly meant to be. If you've ever chased after her validation, if you've ever felt your strength diminish just to prove you were enough, then this message is for you. Don't look away. Watch until the end. Because once you grasp what Sartre truly meant, neither your view of her nor your understanding of yourself will ever be the same again. Let's get into it. A man who lives solely for her eventually dies in the silence she leaves behind. Now, this isn't about hating women. It's not about blame. This is about honesty. This is about how our existence functions at its core. Sartre believed something profound. You are nothing until you make a choice about who you will become. Your identity, your thoughts, your very life, it all starts as a blank canvas. And with every decision, you're writing your story. But here's where it all goes wrong. The second you let a woman determine your value, the moment you whisper to yourself, "She completes me," you've handed her the pen. You've given away authorship of your soul. And here's what's often overlooked. Whether she's still figuring herself out or she's emotionally seasoned, she knows when you put her above your own self-worth. She senses when you start dimming your light just to keep her in your life. And when that happens, she steps back. Not because she's unkind, not because she's heartless, but because real desire withers where strength has faded. It can't thrive when you surrender your independence. Attraction, at its core, craves polarity. It needs you to remain your own man, even with her by your side. Younger men, they haven't learned this yet. They believe that if they just love her hard enough, if they give her their everything, she'll never walk away. They treat love like a transaction. My devotion equals her loyalty. But life isn't a trade system. And when that fantasy breaks down, it hurts in places you didn't know could ache. Older men, they've already walked through that fire. Now they sit beside the woman they once couldn't stop thinking about, wondering when the warmth disappeared. They remember when she used to look at them with hunger, back when they still had passion, bold opinions, mystery, back when they hadn't dulled themselves down to be easier to live with. They turned into something safe, something calm, something that's easy to be around, but impossible to desire. And here's the reality most don't want to hear. She doesn't want a man who centers his world around her. She doesn't want someone who abandons his essence just to be enough for her. She doesn't crave nice or predictable. What she truly longs for is a man who's whole on his own. A man who holds his ground whether she's in his orbit or not. That's the kind of man she respects. That's the man she won't forget. That's the man she still wants. Because the man who can walk away, he's the one who never fades from her mind. Sartre understood what so many miss. We're drawn to what we can't fully control. That tension, it fuels desire. A man who doesn't need her, who can enter her life with confidence and exit it without fear. He ignites something primal. Not comfort, not peace, but something deeper. Something that stirs her soul and keeps her awake at night. You've seen it. The quiet man, the composed one. He doesn't talk much, doesn't plead, doesn't chase. And yet, she can't stop thinking about him. Why? Because he never turned himself into her mirror. He didn't echo her emotions or bend to her moods. He remained centered, grounded, unchanged, like a mountain. And women, they don't forget mountains. They remember the man who stayed firm, the one who didn't need their affection to feel complete. Wanting love is human, but needing it to define yourself, that's when you vanish. That's when your identity dissolves. This isn't about playing games. It's not about acting cold or distant. It's about embracing the truth. Real men, they build themselves first. They know who they are before they open their heart. They walk with direction, purpose, clarity, and when love finds them, it follows their lead, not the other way around. You gave her too much, too fast, and in doing so, she felt less. You were told, be vulnerable, share everything, let her in, and you did. You poured your heart out, laid your soul bare. You thought honesty would deepen the bond, that full transparency would bring her closer, that she'd feel secure, connected, loyal, but instead, she drifted. Not because she's heartless, not because she's cruel, but because you handed her something precious before she had truly earned it. You became too easy to decode, too safe to crave. Here's the hard truth. Desire doesn't thrive in comfort. It doesn't grow in predictability or safety. It breathes in the unknown, in the subtle tension that makes things feel alive. You believed that being fully transparent would earn you trust, but instead, it dissolved the mystery. It didn't make you look strong. It made you seem needy. And yes, she felt that shift. Because what truly draws a woman in isn't a man pleading to be understood. It's a man who doesn't need to be. It's the kind of man who stands rooted in who he is, unshaken, even when no one's watching, even when approval is absent, even when he's completely alone. Sartre called this state being for itself. What that means is simple but profound. You define your identity. You decide who you are. You don't mold yourself into someone else's expectations just to feel loved. You don't contort yourself into a version she'll accept. Instead, you make it clear. I'm not here to impress you. I'm not trying to fit into some image you've created in your head. I am who I am, and I won't compromise that just to keep you in my life. And that's not arrogance. That's real masculine presence, that's strength. The power of an older man isn't in his words. It's in the way he carries himself. Ever noticed how a man well into his years can sit silently at a bar and still grab her attention without speaking a word? It's not just his looks. It's not a clever smile or charming pickup line. It's something deeper. It's the weight of his presence. He has nothing left to prove. He's walked the path already. He's made the mistakes. He's bent over backwards trying to please. He's chased. He's begged. He's felt heartbreak, and he's come out the other side. And now, he's done performing. He doesn't show off. He doesn't need to explain himself. He doesn't seek acceptance. He simply is. Grounded. Still. Solid. And that kind of stillness? It speaks louder than any well-rehearsed line ever could. Younger men often believe they have to talk their way into strength, but true power? It doesn't shout. It's quiet. It's composed. And women feel it, even if they don't fully understand it in the moment. It's not threatening, but it is bold. It's not aggressive, but it's magnetic. What she senses is freedom, the kind that can't be controlled. And that, to her, is irresistible. Because being around a man who won't bend just to keep her around, who won't edit himself to stay in her life, triggers something deep. It awakens curiosity, longing, desire, and beneath it all, respect. Because whether she says it out loud or not, every woman knows. The man who doesn't need her is the man she'll never be able to shake from her memory. Here's the part most men don't realize, and once you do, it changes everything. She will test you. Not because she's heartless, not to break you, but because she needs to know if what you're showing her is real. She'll pull back. Not to hurt you, but to observe. What will you do? Will you lose your grip? Will you panic and chase after her? Will you crumble the moment her energy shifts? Sometimes she'll start an argument and disguise it as passion. She might create emotional drama just to see if you'll break. She might turn cold for no reason at all. Why? Because she's asking one quiet, unspoken question. Can this man handle me without falling apart? She isn't looking for perfection. She's looking for strength, the kind that doesn't shatter under pressure, the kind that remains calm even when things feel chaotic, the kind that holds firm even when she becomes unpredictable. If you start chasing, if you explain away every emotion, if you try to fix every little thing, if you beg her to stay when she tests your boundaries, you've already given up something far more valuable than her. You've given up yourself. You're no longer the man with his own direction. You've stepped off your path. You've traded purpose for permission, and you've become something else. A mirror reflecting her fears, her doubts, her mood swings. She can no longer feel you. All she sees is herself, and no woman longs for a reflection. But if you stand your ground, if you stay centered, calm, unshaken, if you don't respond just because she wants a reaction, then something deeper happens. She begins to feel your presence. She feels the strength that doesn't demand attention. She senses your freedom, and that freedom triggers something inside her that she can't put into words. It creates what Sartre called the anguish of freedom. Not for you, but for her. Because now she realizes you're not clinging to her. You're not relying on her affection to feel like a man. You're not afraid to walk away if it means staying true to yourself. And that moment, it hits her hard. Because a man like that, he's rare. And what's rare awakens desire. Not because you're playing mind games, not because you're pulling away on purpose, not because you're trying to seem cold, but because you're just being yourself, unapologetically and without fear. And that's what she's really testing. She's not checking to see if you're polite. She's watching to see if you're authentic. And when she discovers you are, when she realizes you won't bend, won't shrink, won't break just to earn her love, she won't be able to forget you. Because a man who knows who he is, a man who won't collapse under emotional pressure, a man who chooses her but doesn't need her, that man becomes unforgettable. The truth is, you were never really missing her. What you were aching for, what left that hollow space inside, was yourself. From a young age, you were fed the same message over and over. Make her happy, be who she wants, avoid upsetting her, keep the peace no matter what. And so, you did exactly that. You sidestepped conflict. You bit your tongue when you had something real to say. You nodded yes when every part of you was screaming no. You stayed silent when something felt off. And little by little, without even noticing it, you started to drift away from your own truth. You stopped being sharp. You stopped being bold. You stopped being you. And then she left. You stood there, confused, wondering what went wrong. You were convinced you had done everything right. But the truth? She didn't walk away because of something you did. She walked because of something you lost. You. You thought you were giving her love, pouring yourself into the relationship. But in reality, you were abandoning the one person who needed you the most: yourself. Sartre had a word for this: bad faith. It's when you lie to yourself to avoid facing the uncomfortable truth about freedom. It's when you pretend to be someone else because it feels safer than being who you really are. You told yourself you were doing it for love, but underneath it all, it was fear. Fear of rejection, fear of being alone, fear that the real you wouldn't be enough. And here's the toughest part: she felt it. Maybe she couldn't put it into words. Maybe she couldn't explain it, but she knew. She sensed the moment you stopped standing in your own truth. She felt when you disappeared behind your own silence and comfort. And in that moment, something between you cracked. She didn't want a man who needed her just to breathe. But the world told you the opposite, didn't it? Movies, love songs, friends, they all preach the same story. Show her you can't live without her. Make her your everything. Make her the center of your world, so you did. You wrapped your life around her. You made her your oxygen. You tried to prove your love by making her the reason you got up every morning. But no one ever told you the truth. She doesn't want a man who needs her to survive. She wants a man who breathes just fine on his own. Because the moment your peace, your sense of worth, your identity, and your joy begin to depend on her, she feels the weight of it. And instead of feeling cherished, she begins to feel pressured. At first, sure, it might feel flattering. Being needed often does. But over time, something shifts. The man who once seemed grounded now feels heavy. The man who once held his own now clings to her world. And that changes the entire dynamic. Here's something essential that most people never learn. Love can only grow where there is freedom. It only thrives when both people show up whole. Not as two broken halves trying to feel complete, but as two individuals already rooted in themselves. If you want her to feel a real connection, not out of guilt, habit, or obligation, but out of desire, then you must learn to breathe without her. You must find your own purpose. You must become your own source of balance. You cannot collapse every time she grows distant. You cannot beg for her love just to feel valid. Because when you become that kind of man, not by pretending, not by quoting advice, but by living it, something rare happens. She feels it. That stillness, that calm, that quiet strength. It pulls her in without effort. You don't chase, you don't try to impress, you just exist, with depth, with clarity, with presence, and she may never say it aloud. She might not even fully understand it, but she will remember it, even if she walks away, even if she ends up with someone else. Even if your paths never cross again, she won't forget you. Not because you gave her the world, not because you were sweet or endlessly available, but because you were whole, because you didn't crumble to make her stay, because you had the strength to remain and the power to leave. That kind of man, he's rare. And here's the deeper truth. Most women never forget the rare man who refused to abandon himself just to be loved. The man who stood tall in his truth, without apology, without permission. The man who chose her, but never needed her to define his worth. That's the man who echoes in her memory. So don't be the one who suffocates without her. Be the man who breathes, fully, deeply, freely, whether she stays in your life or not. Because the moment you become that man, you become unforgettable. And here's what you need to hear most. You are not too late. It doesn't matter if you're just starting your journey at 20, or waking up at 70 after years of silence, sacrifice, and self-forgetting. None of that matters. There is no deadline for coming home to yourself. There's no expiration date on waking up and choosing something different. The path back to yourself doesn't begin with some grand gesture. It starts with something simple, something small, yet powerful. Refusal. Not the kind that stems from bitterness or anger. No, this refusal comes from a deeper place. A place where you finally realized your own worth. You stop begging. You stop offering explanations just to convince someone to stay. You stop performing. You stop chasing. You stop shrinking yourself to fit into a world that was never built for the real you. Because here's the truth. You were never meant to be chosen. You were meant to become grounded, to become expansive, to become the kind of presence that's impossible to ignore, even when you're silent. That's what it means to be the Sartrean man. A man who doesn't shape-shift for approval. A man who never sells pieces of his soul just for a taste of love. He lives from the inside out. He walks his own path. He decides what matters. He defines what is meaningful in his life, without asking anyone else for permission. If she stays, she stays. If she leaves, she leaves. But the man, he remains. Because the man who holds his shape, who doesn't contort or fold to be kept, he's never truly abandoned. Why? Because he never abandoned himself. Even if she walks away, even if your truth is met with silence, even if you stand alone, you are not lost. You are not broken. You are simply making your way back to you. And from that place, everything changes. Not because you gained something new, but because you finally stopped giving yourself away. You're not the same man who started this journey. Something has shifted within you. Maybe that shift isn't loud. Maybe it isn't easy to name, but you feel it. There's a silence inside you now, not the empty kind, not loneliness. It's the kind that feels like peace, like home. You're no longer searching for love to prove your worth. You're no longer bending yourself to fit into someone else's life. You're no longer explaining who you are in the hopes that someone will understand. Because now, you understand. You're not reaching anymore. You're not shrinking to be accepted. You're not performing to be loved. You've stopped spinning around other people. Now, it's the world that begins to revolve around you. Because the man who no longer folds, the man who refuses to lie to himself just to keep someone nearby, and in that power, you finally see it. You were never missing anything. You were never broken. You were never incomplete. The truth is, you are nothing until you choose. But in that moment of choosing, you become everything. You don't need anyone to define you. You don't need a relationship to make you worthy. You don't need the world to hand you an identity. You create that, you claim that, you own that. And yes, freedom is heavy. It doesn't always feel easy. It comes with solitude, with responsibility. But it also brings peace. It brings clarity. It brings strength. And now, that freedom belongs to you. You don't owe anyone your smallness. You don't owe them your silence. So carry it. Carry that freedom the way a man should. Not with rage, not with fear, but with quiet power. And walk. Walk with your head high, with your pace steady, with your soul rooted. Because a man who truly belongs to himself, a man who no longer needs to be chosen, but chooses from a place of wholeness, that man cannot be ignored. He doesn't fade from memory. He leaves a mark, not because he begged to stay, but because he reminded her of something rare. He reminded her what strength really looks like. A man who didn't chase but led. A man who didn't break when she left, but simply kept walking. And that kind of man, she never forgets him. Because he revealed a truth she rarely sees, that the most magnetic thing in the world is a man who already has himself. And now you are that man. Let them feel it. Let the silence speak. Let your presence say everything your words no longer have to. You no longer belong to their expectations. You belong to you. And that changes everything.